Hey, welcome everybody. Okay, this is a video showing a new jig that I made to make these little flat coils like this. I guess a lot of people use these in Orgones, General Crafts, whatever. But anyhow, I made this so that it makes these perfectly flat, nice and round shape, ends come out even. But there's one drawback to it. You have to use a specific wire size for each jig, and you have to use a specific wire length. And I'll get into the reason why on that. Now, the tool consists of three parts. The lid, as you see here. The main body of it that forms your coil, you can see here. And on one side there's an arrow printed on here. That's to tell you what direction to wind your little knob. And then on this end it has the gauge of wire. This one is 20 gauge that you'll use in this jig. And then of course you got your little winding knob here. Okay, now you see how this is formed. Kind of weird looking shaped, but it's for a reason. When you're winding in this direction, which I guess looking at it, be it counterclockwise, your wire is fit in here, and then when you wind it in this direction, as you get the wire in, the round radiuses in here form the shape of the coil. And this pocket is sized so that when you cut the wire length to half of a Lost Cubit, it'll come out perfect. And you'll see what I mean here whenever I demonstrate it. See how the coil fits in there? Nice and perfect. Okay? And then these side pieces right here just help guide the wire in evenly. And you can also use this to kind of straighten your wire a little bit before you get started. Okay? So now, as I mentioned, you're going to use a wire length of 1/2 of a Lost Cubit. I looked it up. A Lost Cubit is 596.6 millimeters. So half of that would be 298. So I got me a cheap 12-inch scale from Harbor Freight, and it has a metric on one edge and it has inches on the other. But the really nice thing I like about it is it has this groove in here for a square head that you can lay your wire in when you're marking it, and you don't have to chase it all over the place. Okay, so what I've done here was I've cut me a piece of wire already, 298 millimeters long. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mark the exact center of this length, which would be 149 millimeters. And you can see the black Sharpie mark right there on the wire. See? That's very important, so that when you load it into the jig, your coil will wind out correctly and your ends will be nice and even. Okay, so now I've already cut a piece of wire, and this is 20 gauge. And what this is it's just anodized aluminum. It has different colors. I got this box on Amazon a while back and was experimenting with it. This is the label you can see on there. There's 25 different little rolls in here with all these different colors. People use them, I guess, making jewelry, crafts, whatnot. And I thought maybe people that make Orgones and other crafts where they need to use little flat coils, that this might become in handy. So this particular jig, you can use soft, dead soft copper as long as it's 20 gauge, or you can use this. Do not try to use 20 gauge stiff copper wire like for electrical, because it's too stiff and it's not going to come out right. You're going to hate it. So don't even try. I've already tried it and it doesn't work. So this is your best bet. And you can measure these. I've measured them 0.81 or 0.8. Okay, just to make sure that you get your wire size right. Now the pocket on this, you can see it's not very deep at all. It's just barely deep enough to accommodate the diameter of the wire. It should be slightly shallower so that when you put your lid on and you're holding the lid in place, it puts a little bit of tension on your wire. Okay. Now I mentioned that you can use this to straighten your wire when you get started. Okay, say you have a roll wire like this, or even maybe a spool like for the 18 gauge, and it's a pain in the butt trying to get it all nice and straight. You get little bumps, kinks, all that crap in it. Okay, no worries. You got this little guy. You can take care of this real quick. Feed it in there like that. Make sure it's in the little grooves. Put your lid on. Make sure it's in the groove. There we go. See, now you want your lid to fit down flush. You'll feel it rock a little bit. That's because it's sitting on the wire. Okay? But you want to make sure you don't have a big gap on there. Now, all you have to do is just pull your wire through. And it makes it nice and straight. You have a little bit of a bend to it, but you don't have all those big kinks and valleys and all that to worry about. Okay? Now that you got your wire nice and straight, you can lay it in your scale or your tape measure or whatever you're using. You're going to lay it down in there, line your end up down here, mark your center point, cut it off down here, and you're good to go. You could sit there in probably about 10-15 minutes and have a crap load of pieces already cut, and you can wind these little coils very, very quickly. Okay, so now we have our wire cut, and I got the center marked right here. Now you're going to take your little tool, put your knob in the little slot. You want to make sure it's running the same way that your wire is going to be going. Place your wire in here. And then put your lid on. And again, make sure that your wire is sitting in the little grooves there, sitting in there. Now if you look in the very end of this, the lighting in here isn't very good. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. But you should be able to see your little black Sharpie mark through the little hole right there. Okay? Now all you got to do, turn it. See the little arrow direction? That's which way we're going to turn the arrow. Now watch the ends of the wire. You got an equal amount coming out on each end. And you just simply turn this. Make sure you keep tension on the lid. You don't want the lid to try to raise up on you. Okay? Now take the lid off. Sometimes when you're turning it and it's done, you'll hear a little clicking sound. That's the little ends in there. Now see how the coil is formed inside that recess? That's why it's shaped the way it is. Then to get it out, you just pull your little knob back, turn it a little bit, pop it out from the middle. And there you go. See how easy and simple that was? Cake. It's going to take you longer to cut your wire and mark it than it does to put it in here and actually wind your coil. Now, there's other ways you can use this as well. You don't have to start in the middle if you don't want to. Here I got another piece of wire cut. Same length. No matter what you're doing with this, you don't want to go over that measurement I gave you, half of a Lost Cubit, because that's what this is sized for. If you used a longer piece of wire in there, this little recess in here, the cavity, would have to be bigger to accommodate more wire, and it doesn't have that ability. So you got to make sure that your wire length is right. So another way you can use this is start on the end. See how I put the piece of wire in there, and I turned it to where almost a whole complete turn, actually probably about half a turn, and got it started. Then you can put this on. Sometimes holding it to stay in place is kind of a pain in the butt to get the lid on. I usually put a little bit of tension on the knob with my fingers down here. I'll see how the wire is in there on the end. Put your lid on. The wire is in the groove. Now instead of a double wrapped coil, you're going to do a single wrapped coil, where you're feeding the wire all from one end. You don't have no wire coming in from this end because you started on the end of the wire. So you just keep wrapping. Make sure you hold the lid on. And there you go. Look at that. Nice, beautiful round coil. And again, just slide this back out, turn it a little bit, pop your coil out from the middle. Voila. Look at that. Now this is a single wrapped coil. See, you only have one end sticking out there, but it's the same exact wire length as your double wrapped coils, and it's the same diameter. The only difference is you don't have two ends on here. You don't have two ends sticking out like the double wrap. You only have one end. The other end is in here in the middle of the coil. So there's another option that you can use this in. Now what you can do with the single wrapped coil is, if you wanted to make little small spiral coils like this to put it in an Orgone, or if you're working on some other craft project and you want to put it in epoxy where you want this kind of shape, this will do it for you. The nice thing about it is this pyramid, the wire length is exactly 1/2 of a Lost Cubit. Really nice. Now how to do that is you wind a single wrapped coil like this, and let me see, depending on if you wanted it to go clockwise or counterclockwise, it'd be depending on whether you flip it this way or that way. I'm just gonna stick it on here and get you something like this, or like a box cutter razor blade. This is dull, so I don't have to worry about cutting myself. But you want to get in there like this and just start going around. And this stuff bends real easy. You got to be very careful with it. But this is basically all I done, was just keep going around and around. I guess I'm going the wrong way there. There we go. And as you go around, it'll space the wraps out. You have to play with it a little bit. It might take you a couple to get the hang of it. But once you get the hang of it and you understand what's going on, it's really very simple, very easy. And if you're careful with it when you're doing it, because like I said, this aluminum wire, it bends real easy. That's why I kind of use something like this. Just go along, take your time. And you can see how it's spacing the wraps out. And by the time you get done, if you're careful with it, you'll end up with something like this. Pretty neat, right? Okay. Now, that's the 20 gauge. Now I have another one here that is made for 18 gauge. Same way. It's got the number on here specifying what gauge wire you put in here. It's got the little arrow here on the side, tells you which way to turn the knob. Knob will be included, and it'll have another lid on it just the same as the other one. The only difference between this one and the other one is the pocket is recessed in a little bit deeper to accommodate the larger gauge wire, and the pocket here is a little bit bigger to accommodate for the larger gauge wire. But again, you're going to use the same length, half of a Lost Cubit. Doesn't matter what gauge, the measurement is going to be the same. Okay, and so I've already cut one here, just like you did before. Put you a mark on there in the middle. Dang camera's not picking it up. So anyhow, you got your mark in there, and you load it up just exactly the same way. Put the mark in the center. But now you can do this with both jigs, but I'm going to show you on the 18. If you're into doing the triskelions, you can do the triskelions with this. And how you achieve that is, these are basically going to be 3 coils, okay, half of a Lost Cubit each one, but you're going to cut your length of wire all in one big piece. And how I did that was, I've already got the piece cut, but I'll show you real quick what I did. Bring your end up to your length right there, and then come down here, and I just pull a little Sharpie mark right there to get my measurement. Okay, now this is going to be 1 coil. So you're going to bring this mark up to your 298. Now this center one, or this middle section, you're going to mark the center, 149. Okay? And this one, and then you bring it up to your length, right there, and then you're going to cut the end of it off down here. Okay? That's going to give you enough wire for 3 coils that are going to be half of a Lost Cubit. Okay? Now this center one here in the middle, you got the big mark, that's the one you're going to start with. So we'll get our 18 gauge jig here, stick it in so that Sharpie mark is in your little spindle. Put your lid on. Make sure we're tight all the way around. It looks good. Camera might not pick it up, but I can see down in there that my Sharpie mark is on the spindle. Okay, so now hold on to the lid, and we're going to turn. Now here we're going to keep turning until we can't turn anymore. Now if you look, there's a Sharpie mark here and then one over here. This is showing you this is the length of wire for your second coil, and this is the length of wire sticking out over here for your third coil. So you can see those marks, them Sharpie marks coming up. So we'll keep turning this. We're going to be, okay, now I can't turn it no more. It stopped. Once it stops, don't try to force it. You're done. Because what's happened was, it's wound up the length of coil in here, or the length of wire. I guess maybe we probably could go just a wee little bit. You don't want to force it too awful much. Yep, there we go. That's better. Now see, this is going to be your center coil in your triskelion. It's going to be this one right here. It's double wrapped. See, now you got a length of wire coming out here for the other coil, and you got a length of wire coming out here for the third coil. Okay, now what we're going to do, pop this girl out without distorting it. There we go. Just kind of give this wire a little bit straightened here. And you want to be careful with it. You don't get it all messed up while you're working around with it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make like a single wrapped coil. Put in your little jig here, the end of the wire, put it in the spindle, make sure it's in the little groove, put a little tension on it, get it started so you have a little hook there on the end. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put our lid on. Make sure our wire is in the groove, and we're going to keep turning. You're going to see how it's feeding the wire in, just like we did on the 20 gauge with a single wrapped coil. Doing exactly the same thing here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wind this up until we get as much of this in here as we can. And you don't want to get too overboard with it because you don't want to distort this coil. So we're going to stop there. We're going to take the lid off. There's your second coil. Pop that out. Now I don't make triskelions. I know they're supposed to be wound in a specific direction, so that's up to you as you're making it. If you need to go this way, wrap it around like that, all you got to do is just turn your coil. See, and twist it like that, depending on which direction that you need it to be. So you don't have to worry so much when you're putting it in the jig as far as how this one is oriented. Just stick your wire in there, get it going, wind the coil up. Now what you're going to do is just kind of tweak it by hand. At this point, you can move it around by hand, get it to be where you want it to be, and you're golden. The hardest part of it is giving you the majority of the coil is nicely wrapped and it's done. I think that's right. So see, we got our middle coil, which is double wrapped, and then we got one end done. Now we'll go in here, put this wire in, we'll do the same thing to this. Remember, you always want to use your jig, wind it in the same direction always. Okay. Get this going. Okay, we got our little hook formed. It should stay in there nice. Get our lid on. There we go. Okay. Third coil, look at that. Nice and pretty, nice and round. Take that out. And then it's just a matter of tweaking it with your fingers. You can roll it up a little bit more. Pinch it in between your fingers. And if you're making something decorative, not really for Orgone or anything like that, you can leave them like this. Use your creativity, whatever strikes at you. Or if you are making triskelions, then you can kind of tweak these around and get them lined up where however they're supposed to be. Like I say, I don't make triskelions, so I'm not real good at that, but that's the way I see it. Okay? So see, there's more than just one use that you can use these for. Don't be afraid to use your creativity. You know, think of different other things to do. The only thing you have to adhere to is that you have the right size gauge wire for that particular jig, okay, and you have your wire length correct, half of a Lost Cubit. Now this wire over here, the 18, this is the spool that I got. It's aluminum wire. It just has a copper anodized coating on it. It's nice and soft. And this one is 18 gauge. You can see on there. And it measures exactly to 18 gauge. If you was to get dead soft copper, it measures right around 1 millimeter. So you should be good to go, even if you got 18 gauge dead soft copper. That should work in here, no problem, because it's the exact same size as this spool aluminum that I have. Or the other one, if you have 20 gauge dead soft copper, this one should work as well in the 20 gauge. So just do not use stiff copper wire, because it's going to be too stiff and it's not going to work right. Okay. Now, as far as the triskelions are, I'm working on making a jig where the pocket is offset, so that whenever you're winding your two side coils, you can get up a lot closer with it. But I still have some tweaking to do to this. If I get it working okay, then this will be another offering that I'll have on my Etsy site. But until then, right now we have the 18 gauge and the 20 gauge. I'm working on making another one for 14 gauge dead soft copper, but it's going to be a little bit before I have it engineered out and printed and tested. And at the moment I have quite a few other things that I have to get done first, so it might be a minute or two before I get it. If you have a specific request, shoot me a line. I'll be glad to do whatever I possibly can to help you out. If you want to say you're not using Lost Cubit, maybe you're using Sacred Cubit, and you want to use 1/3 of that length, just let me know. I'll do what I can and get you fixed up. Okay? Or if there's any other kind of jigs for geometric shapes, if you're making tensor rings that are octagon shaped, let me know what your sizes are. I can make you a flat jig to where you can make all that stuff yourself. I'll be happy to help anybody that I can. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Go to my website, check them out. If you have any questions, shoot me a line. Till next time.